All right. So I see here it's light lawn and leaves instead of leaf litter. I did this presentation for the library and they didn't like me using the word litter. So I had to change the name. I'm going to change it back. I think it very important that just like we have changed the connotation of weed in milkweed, and that's now acceptable. I think it's important that people understand what leaf litter is and that that's not a bad thing. So I will be changing it. Um, the picture here, I think um, I copied it off of Facebook at one time. So I appreciate. I'm sorry that it's a little bit blurry, but it was just too perfect to pass up. it it really shows a good picture of what we are doing to the environment. So you can see that because of what we are doing in our lawns, and Doug Tellamy is telling us, oh, we can create national parks in our backyards and stuff like that. But so much of what we are doing is driving out all the things that we want there. So today, that's what I'm going to be talking about. I've decided to focus on just a few things that represent all the other critters that we're damaging. So I have lightning bugs, flowers, birds, moths, and bees. And I'll talk a little bit about why these things are important and what we are doing that damages them. So, you know what? I'm Gloria, you're going to have to, if somebody raise their hands, you're going to have to intervene. I need to minimize the people or I can't see all of my screen.
Okay, I'm on it.
Okay. Um, so the first thing is moths, and we look at moths as pests. They get into our house, they eat food, they make holes in our clothes. We look at them as pests, but they're really very important. Moths, there's many more moths than caterpillars. I'm sorry, than butterflies, and the moth caterpillars are really much more important and more numerous than the butterflies. So, caterpillars are a main source of nutrition for many of the birds, especially when they have babies and they go through numerous numbers of moths. Moths eat mosquitoes. Moths, I'm sorry, I'm still sleeping. Uh, Moths are the main source of food for bats, and bats eat mosquitoes. So, if you want to minimize mosquitoes in your yard, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. This is all right. Let's get rid of the. Usually I turn my sound off, and I can't turn my sound off right now. So, anyway, so that's why we need moths. And moths are having huge problems in our yards. The next one that I'd like to talk about is lightning bugs. We think of them as nostalgia, and the reason that we want lightning bugs is simply because, oh, we had them as children and we like to watch them. However, lightning bugs, for one thing, are sort of like the canary in the coal mine, in that a healthy environment has lightning bugs. If you're not seeing lightning bugs, you don't have a healthy environment. The other thing is we may not realize that the lightning bug larva, which goes underground, eats so many of the damaging insects that we don't want. So instead of using slug repellents and getting rid of aphids and stuff like that, all we need to do is set it up so that we have lightning bugs. as far as bees, plants, and birds, I think we know why we want them. So, our good intentions. This is what your typical suburban landscape looks like. Nice, clean grass, no weeds, no bare patches, no leaves in the fall. We're well lit up. So there's no security issues. And our house looks all bright and pretty. So let's start with light pollution, something we don't really think about factoring in to wildlife or environment. 99% of the population lives under an artificially lit sky. Think about it. I know I have trouble sleeping. And when I look out the window, which faces south during the night, it looks like dusk because it is so lit up. This picture is probably one you've seen before. It's taken from dark skies, but boy, is it a good example. We light our homes for security purposes. Nice bright lights so that no danger or unscrupulous people can be there or anything else. So this is what it looks like. If you dim the light, look off. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but look off over here. There's a person there. You don't see that person with the bright lights, but there's a person there. Just like it's hard to drive when you see a glare. When you have really bright lights, it damages your ability of security. So, what does that light pollution do for the various things that I just talked about? Moths. One thing I just told you why we need the moths. So, why do you see so many dead moths around a light? Well, the thing is that in order to navigate, moths need to keep their back to the light. They think about the moon, and the moon is far away. They can keep their back to the moon and navigate. But when there's an artificial light and they keep their back to it, all they can do is fly in circles. So they fly and fly and fly around the circles. They literally die of exhaustion. They just drop because they can't leave that light. The other thing is they use lights to attract mates, and when there is artificial light, it interferes with that as well. So we are killing off our moths with the light. Fireflies, same thing as far as attracting mates. They use their flash to send a certain pattern to the mate. If there is artificial lights, they can't see the flashes. So when you have lots of artificial lights around your house, you're not going to have lightning bugs because even if they come, they can't mate. So you're not going to have more of them. Birds, especially during migration time, many of the birds use the moon and the stars to navigate. So artificial lights, they don't know where to go. They can't navigate. They also can't tell the difference between inside and outside. So if you have your lights inside, the birds think that they can fly in, they hit the glass. They also use night and day for resting, so they know whether it's night or day. Artificial lights, they don't know whether it's night or day. So during the day, they're exhausted because they've been up all night long. Again, I just mentioned windows. That's such a major problem. Plant growth, not a huge factor, but again, plants have photoreceptors. Depending on the kind of light it is, those photoreceptors can be triggered by artificial light. So it's the same thing. They're photosynthesizing all night long instead of just during the day. They're exhausted. They use up all of their energy, they use up all of their sugars, and then they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Bees. Bees are typically not active during the night. They sleep. Artificial light affects their circadian rhythm. Same thing. Lots of artificial light. Bees aren't sleeping during the night. They're not doing what they're supposed to do during the day because they're exhausted. If the artificial light is affecting the blooms on the flowers, that affects the bee's ability to get pollen. So all of these things, artificial light. I'm going to go through the problems first, and then I will talk about solutions. So perfectly manicured lawns. The roots of your grass are equal to the length of the blade. You've heard this before, I'm sure. So the shorter the roots, the denser, short grass that you have requires more water. It also requires herbicides. And anything that you're putting into the grass and the water is running off is all affecting everything around it. So there's a lot of things that are happening underneath your grass. If you're using herbicides and the water is running off, the things that are happening under the soil are not able to function because the grass is too thick and you're putting chemicals down into it. Broadleaf herbicides. Broadleaf herbicides kill any broadleaf, regardless of whether it's a weed or it's not a weed. Nitrates, fertilizers are running off into the water. So these are some of these things that this beautiful lawn that you have is doing. Weeds, dandelions. We talk about the bees. Early bees need nectar. One of their main sources of nectar are dandelions. Even though dandelions are not native, they're still an important food source for especially the little early season bees. Leave the dandelions in the early spring. I get it, you don't want a yard full of dandelions, so just cut off the heads before they go to seed. The heads really aren't helping them. But all these little, this is a little sweat bee, and this is actually a picture that I took in the early spring. So some of the weeds that are helpful to leave in your lawns: dandelions, burdock for the early spring. You probably want to get rid of it before it gets too big. But again, for the early spring, it's very helpful. Clover, the plantain, these are all weeds that you can leave in your yard. Maybe as we get into summer and there's more food sources, then you can dig them out. As far as that nice, thick green from edge of your property to edge of your property, it leaves no place for the bees to nest. The vast majority of bees are soil nesters. They're down in the ground. They need loose soil or rotting sticks, brush piles, other things like that in order to nest. When you have that beautiful lawn, property line to property line, the bees have no place to nest. Other bees nest in stalks. This is actually my backyard. You need to leave some of those stalks, especially mason bees, leafcutter bees, the smaller carpenter bees all nest in stalks. So if you simply cut those stalks down so that just a third of, oh, well, I'll get more into that, but cut them down just so that a third of them are still left. That's where the bees will be. Once the rest of your things grow in, you'll never see them. It doesn't matter if they're there. So fireflies, I talked a little bit about why we need fireflies. So this shows you better the life cycle of the firefly. They need loose soil. If they have no loose soil, they can't get down into the soil for their pupa and their larvae to get down into the soil. They're down in that soil for 2 years. While they're down in that soil, they're eating the grubs and other larvae that's down there that are destroying your grass. So we need that larva to be there. If the larva it has no place to be, then you're not going to have fireflies, but you're also going to have other insect problems. Fireflies need some place to hide during the day. This is a very nice showing of all of the other things that are killing off our fireflies. So the flying adult during the day needs places to hide. When you spray your lawn, you're killing them off. Brush piles, leaf litter. Let's get back to that term litter. Litter is something that is just strewn about where we don't want it. But leaf litter we actually need. So if you leave the leaves or blow them to someplace where they won't be bothering you, then there's still homes for all those little critters. Brush piles. Again, this is my backyard. Leave a nice big pile of brush for some of the mammals to live in during the winter, caterpillars to hide and make cocoons during the winter. Between that and the leaf litter, they all need these things. Leaves, logs, and decaying wood are good hiding places during the day and warm places during the winter. Carpenter bees, which are a source of irritation for many people because they like rotting wood. Well, they need rotting wood. So if your deck or the soffits of your house are just a little bit soft and they have no place else to go, they're going to make bigger holes. But if you leave them nice rotting logs, that's a lot easier for them to nest in. So they're going to use those instead. Those sticks, those leaves, the brush pile, the birds are going to use them. Caterpillars, as I mentioned before, most of the moth caterpillars, when they are ready to form a cocoon, drop to the ground. One of two things will happen. They're going to have a nice soft landing. There's going to be underbrush or leaves or something that they can hide and make a cocoon, or they're going to keep going until they find someplace. If they can't find someplace, they die of exhaustion or dehydration. So far, are there any questions?
No, no, I just make a comment. I didn't realize fireflies needed loose soil. That might be a little challenge in my clay yard, but You
Play
know,
is
yeah.
not the problem.
Oh,
Play is not the problem
okay.
because you have to remember that fireflies are native. They're native to this area. If they're native to this area, they can get through your clay. They have evolved here. They know what to do with clay. The problem is the thick turf grass that they can't get through.
Okay. Good. I'm covered.
Does it make sense?
Yes.
Okay. I can go through this and then maybe we can talk a little bit about what does it really mean to be native? So, what can you do to help? Let's start with light pollution. One of the two big problems with light pollution. One is commercial or your village. The other is your home. Commercial or the village. You need to get to your village and discuss this problem with them. They can make a lot of modifications to the village ordinances or to their own use to use, and I'll go into it a little bit more, different colors of light, or simply make sure that that light is shaded and just going straight down and only covering where it needs to cover. For your own home, turn off the lights outside when they're not needed. You don't always need everything to be lit up. Or use motion sensors. As far as your windows, either turn off lights that you're not using. You can put stickers on your windows so that the birds see that there's something there, or simply close the curtains. All right, let me get back. I thought I had a slide, but I don't. The color of the lights makes a huge difference. The lights we usually use, bright white, send out the messages to the moths and the birds and the plants that are the same messages as the sun sends out. Simply using a dull white or especially an amber colored light, the moths, the plants, the birds, they don't recognize those as natural lights. So simply changing the color of the lights makes a world of difference. This is a picture of a messy lawn. This is a healthy lawn. You could see that it still has some grass, but you can also see that the grass is a little bit shaggy. It's been left longer. If you look under some of the plants, you can see that there's areas that are not planted. You can see that there are soft landings. This is what a messy lawn can look like. This is what a messy lawn looks like. This is my own yard. And the stalks on the left-hand side of the screen that are in a pot are ones that I did cut down and I left them there for the bees to nest in. They're in a pot, they're standing upright. The bees don't know whether they're in the ground or they're in a pot because they're looking for dead stalks. So these do the job. So this is just tucked in neatly behind my vegetable garden. Nobody else will really see it but me. The brush pile, we have a hedge that functions as a fence for our yard. So we just have a big brush pile underneath. Again, nobody else in the neighborhood really sees it except us. We know it's there and it's a nice, healthy place. Leave the leaves. We can't say that enough. If you don't want the leaves everywhere, use a, a electric, please, leaf blower and just blow them underneath the trees. That'll make a nice soft landing, especially if they're under oak trees. Please don't chop them up though, because many of these little critters hide under the leaves. If you run the lawnmower to mulch them, you're killing everything that's hiding in them. So this is what you can do to help. These are some of the sources that I used or that you can go to. And that about covers it. So any questions, comments, discuss? What can I let me make a comment about native. As Gloria said, she was concerned about her clay soil. So something that is native has evolved in the area at the same time as the soil, the plants, the insects, the animals. That's what makes them native. If the fireflies couldn't get through clay before all of us people were here, they wouldn't be here. They would have evolved elsewhere, and any firefly here wouldn't have made it. But because fireflies are native, we know that they can lay their eggs and that their larvae can penetrate through the clay. So that actually does one more extra duty. If they are penetrating through the clay, they're making holes in our clay. That means that the storm water can penetrate down into the clay. And among so many other things like the roots of the native plants, the fireflies are helping to irrigate our thick clay. So, anything else?
Marilyn, you may have said this and the voice went out for a moment, but what are the best color lights to not interfere with all of the insects and other things we want to preserve?
Amber is the best one that makes things seeable. Um, a, a duller white light is better than a bright white light, but not as good as amber. And then blue works well. I mean, usually if you have a blue light, you can still light up a pathway or see, and that too they don't recognize. It's different light waves.
Okay, so blue or amber, because my lights can go any color.
Amber is usually the recommended one, but sometimes blue is prettier than the amber. People don't like the way amber looks.
Thank you.
I also heard that one step further would be to have LED amber lights. And it's
I think most of the lights you buy nowadays are all LEDs,
true.
but yeah, that is very true. So, but again, we just went through fall and now everything is snow covered, so it doesn't matter. But so many people are saying, "Oh, well, I mulch all my leaves." But think about what's happening when you mulch your leaves. If you want to mulch the leaves, blow them into some place where you don't care. Wait until a good 4 weeks into some warmer weather where any of the caterpillars or larvae or stuff that's in there would have hatched. And the bees are out and they would have hatched, and then mulch them. But the vast majority of leaves are going to decompose on their own anyway. There's a few leaves that are more troublesome, but the vast majority of leaves by springtime, they're going to be all decomposed anyway.
Yeah, the only leaves I see hanging in there are the oaks. Though I was doing some serious leaf blowing this fall. Like I have a couple places under trees where I let the leaves accumulate, and I do wonder if, I mean, I have a pretty powerful leaf blower. Do you wonder if we are injuring the little caterpillars or cocoons that are clinging to those leaves as I'm blowing them through the air?
Have
I
you ever really seen a cocoon? Because it's not going to be a butterfly chrysalis that's going to be in there. It's going to be a cocoon. Have you ever seen a cocoon? Have you ever touched one?
yeah,
They're pretty sturdy.
all right.
I don't, and they're pretty strong. I think a lawnmower and lawnmower blades would do them in, but I can't imagine that blowing a leaf is gonna affect them any.
Good.
I haven't seen any research on that, but
I have
just
another question. Oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead. Marty, we just lost you.
Okay, I have another question, but I don't want to take any to someone else. I know I
No, go
already asked
ahead.
one. So I do have some trees in my lawn. I've been, working on getting more natives and trying to follow all these recommendations, but I do need to create some more soft landings. I see, especially in the parkway, I have some trees and it's all just grass there and it's packed in. And so I'd like to create some soft landings in my parkway for my trees next year. What would you recommend and when would you recommend doing that?
Um, Spring as soon as you can. I mean, the first thing would be to kill off the grass, and then there's on the website, I think we have a lot of suggestions for plants. If you need something right away, wood chips are better than grass, but not as good as plants. Um, there's a lot of spring ephemerals that work very well under the shade of the tree that have nice leaves, but ferns work well. Pat, what else would you suggest?
Well, if she needs to be able to get rid of the grass first before she can
That's what I
plant all
said.
that.
Yeah, you got to get rid of the
Yeah.
grass
And
first.
actually, before this snow for my front yard, it's a little late to do anything now. So early in the spring, when it started to melt, you're putting down the cardboard, and then the leaves you saved from last fall, put them on top of it, and wet them down so they stay put. Sometimes you have to add a little compost or
Mulch?
whatever you have. I put bricks on one area in the backyard with
Okay.
some compost because I didn't have enough. So getting that to just kind of cover, and then
Okay.
as soon as you can plant. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to kill that grass. And yeah, you want to then start planning what you're going to put in with courtesy that, the sidewalk, you're far enough from the sidewalk. When they say plant something 18-inch on the center, and if it's something like prairie drop seed, you might want to go 20 inches from the center because it does spread and can create a tripping hazard on that sidewalk. So planting the spring ephemerals, depending on how much shade you have, is a really good idea. They do take a little longer in some cases to get going, but you can add in the interim, get some ground covers like prairie pussy toes, to grow and spread. They will spread quite fast. Purple poppy mallow, which it's not going to love the shade, but how big your trees are, we don't know. So you can put those on the perimeter, but keep that back because it spreads towards the sun and vining type thing. So it's just picking the right plants for a parkway, is thinking about how they're going to affect the walkways around it and getting in and out of the car parked in front of it. And then also you don't want anything too tall because everybody loves their puppies, and the puppies are on a leash, and they're not on a leash to walk in the street. They're on a leash to go on the grass so that they can go and do their business and explore and have a good time. So planting low things that aren't going to get knocked over is really key to do.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
The other thing, Pat, you can chime in on this. I haven't tried it, but my research has shown that when you're putting the cardboard down, you can plant right through it.
Yeah.
So if you just poke holes in the cardboard, plant into the ground through the cardboard, leave the cardboard there, it'll kill off the rest of the grass, but you can kind of get a head start on your plants.
Yes, that will do it. You can, and I have done that in this area that's behind the fence here, my soft landings, because I was impatient. So yes, but what you're going to do is you're going to be taking out a piece of cardboard and a piece of grass, because the grass isn't dead yet. Unless you put 4-5 inches of composted material on top of it, then you can plant right in that and actually don't have to dig through the cardboard. But then that's a big expense, and not everybody has enough partially composted leaves to do that with. I have the fence around my area because I have a 70-year-old sycamore tree, which is very close to the same way oaks leaves don't disintegrate fast. Neither do they, only they're dinner plate size. And with that, this turned out to be a wind tunnel, and I put a fence around it in the fall, it goes through the winter, and I made it too high this year with those poles. I'm getting shorter poles, but I also came up with another idea where I can have it kind of a year-round blockade, so that when the wind comes whipping through there, they don't blow them all away because they're my leaves, and I want them. Yes, Gloria.
Sarah has a question here. What is a spring ephemeral?
It's much like a daffodil. It blooms for a short period of time very early, but they're native plants, and they go much longer usually than in being green, if not blooming, than the daffodils do. In fact, one of the key ones that I really love, it's my favorite flower, is bloodroot, and it gets this white flower very, very early. But the foliage does fade when it gets into July. But if you have other things around it, like grasses and sedges, they can then compensate. Just like some people plant their daffodils and then they put around them hostas, does the same thing. The hosta covers up as the foliage fades away. So that's kind of what you do with all native plants and many different spring ephemerals, which tend to bloom in March and April, depending on weather. That gives you that early plants for the early bees. That's pretty much what it is. So ginger, wild ginger, Solomon seal, not quite as early but it's too tall for like a parkway. would be mayapple. Solomon seal would probably be too tall also. The wild ginger and the bloodroot, and a few other plants that are lower to the ground. And there is a sedum that can tolerate shade, also a native sedum. So that's always a good thing to have. Does that help?
What would be the special attraction to having spring ephemerals underneath a tree in that soft landing area?
A deciduous tree, isn't leafed out when those plants are going to bloom. So when your daffodils are blooming, certain varieties, because they have early to very late now, very early to very late ones, they've cultivated them like that. If they're the spring ephemerals are naturally going by the weather systems and the environment, and with that they bloom before the trees leaf out, so they're getting the sun that they need to be coming to start providing nectar and pollen for the bees and early moths, very early. But then when the trees leaf out, they can tolerate that shade area, and are happy there, and they can last through most of the summer. So it's just adding certain sedges and other plants that will bloom in a little less, that like shade, that will bloom later on in the season. And there are goldenrods and asters that will do that also. So you get a whole spectrum blooming from very, very early to the end of the season.
Thank you so much, everyone. I have to run to another commitment, but I appreciate the knowledge, and I like that we got to talk a little bit today. Thanks.
Yeah, it's kind of a nice feeling. Bye-bye, Marty.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Yeah, the spring ephemerals, I think, are just a really nice means of getting some pretty flowers in a spot where you can't otherwise get pretty flowers.
Yeah.
Because they're so shaded.
A plant named bellwort is one of my favorites. A little taller, but you have Jacob's ladder, and you have blue woodland sedge, blue woodland flax. They all add to that ambience. And then your spring beauty bulb, which is a corm, much like a bulb. That's also very nice to have carpet in there amongst the plants. It just kind of naturalizes.
Very good.
Okay, so everybody is going to let their lawns grow longer, leave a little bit of mess in their yards, even during the summer. Let there be some leaf litter and brush piles, and just put them in places where your neighbors won't complain about them. You'll know they're there. The critters will know that they're there, and your neighbors won't, so you don't have complaints. And light pollution is just change out the lights and put in motion sensors. I know in our yard, we have to have a light at the front of our driveway, because if we don't and we come home late, you won't see it. But we put in amber lights. They're kind of pale amber, and they're new age amber LEDs, and we've been finding that they actually last much longer than the lights we used to use.
Well, that makes good sense. Because when you guys are going to be out and you're coming home in dark, and when your company's coming over so they can see the driveway, but you don't need them the rest of the time. They can be off.
And in the back of our house too. I mean, we've got to have lights, but they're on all very short-term light sensors. And there we do have white, but it's a very dull white. But they're not on for more than a minute or two.
Yeah.
Just enough for us to be able to see where to pull into the garage or take the dog to the dog run and see what he's doing. So there's a lot. And
Yeah.
we have noticed since I've been involved in this, so I would say about the past 5 years, we do have a lot more insects of all kinds, and we have fireflies. We have lots of fireflies. And I know a lot of our neighbors complain they don't have fireflies, and we do. We have fireflies.
I would add that the very first year that I left the leaves, because we hadn't seen fireflies in some time, and I was like, oh, this insect apocalypse. We don't even have fireflies anymore. But that very first spring after leaving the leaves, I had fireflies again.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the other thing is you have to remember too that the fireflies need someplace to hide during the day. So if you have this very well manicured lawn and short cropped plants and stuff like that, they have no place to go during the day. So,
Mm-hmm.
and when I did the research for this, I was shocked to find out the benefits of the firefly larva. And I would recommend. So many people complain about the grubs eating their lawns, and then they use all sorts of herbicides and grub killers and stuff like that. And if you had fireflies, you wouldn't have grubs. So to me, I think that was the biggest takeaway about doing the research for this. A lot of the other stuff I already knew. But for me, finding out about the fireflies was the biggest thing.
I would say I didn't realize just how much of an effect the night lights had on everything in your yard.
Everything.
Plants, the insects, the little creatures. Yeah, that was pretty eye-opening.
It does.
Even with the snow that we've had, moths, there are certain moths, only certain ones, that are still alive and moving around. And the I don't know how they do it, but with the cold, and then they need that dark to be out and about. And once you leave lights on all the time, they can't tell the difference of daylight, nighttime. But moths are really fascinating.
Well, they are, and they really. We're also concerned about the butterflies.
Mm-hmm.
Moths really have a much bigger impact on the environment. And I know Telemi says this all the time, but the moths really have a bigger impact on the environment than the butterflies do. But I was surprised to find out that bats eat moths. And that and that bats also eat mosquitoes. But mosquitoes don't provide a whole lot of protein or nutrition for the bats, but the moths do. So again, if you need moths if you don't want mosquitoes. Because although most of us never see them, most of us do have, if you have big trees, you hit bats. And I know I know I have big, huge trees with holes in them way up high. My trees are well over 100 years old. And I never see bats. But they have to be, we know they're there. So it's sort of like the field of dreams. If you build it, they'll come. So that's kind of like what this is all about. You build a proper environment, they'll come. So that's about all I have. I know I probably went through it kind of fast. It's very odd speaking to a screen where I can't see any people. But however it was set up, having the people was blocking out my screen. So it's really strange just talking to a screen.
Isn't there some kind of thing for presenter mode?
Yeah, I'm going to turn off the recording here.